Hello there, welcome. My name's Peter. I go by more Haste, less speed on all music platforms, and I don't think I'm going to get a chance to shoot a music video for my new song XOI, and so I thought it would be cool to give a little bit of context and background on this song before you listen to it, and then you can kind of reference this video afterwards if you want to, or you don't have to, that's the cool thing about free will. The main gist of this song comes from a quote that I read a couple of years ago by John Adams, who, as far as founding fathers go, he's just another one of them, but I feel like he really hit the nail on the head with this one, and as I am prone to do, I was quick to adopt it as part of my life strategy and part of my approach to thinking about a lot of things in my life, but especially the idea of following in the footsteps of people that came before you, whether that's your grandparents or your parents or even people like your siblings, your cousins, or people that are your age, and then thinking about what that means for your legacy and the way that you'll pass things on to your children or to people that are younger than you that you are around. So that's something that weighs on me heavily and that I think about a lot. And I wanted to find a way to put that into a song because to me, a lot of processing that I do of complex emotions comes in writing it down and putting it to music so that I can simplify it, I can distill it down to its essence. And so it was a two-part process to create this song. The first was to come up with that title XOI, and I'll explain what that means. And then the second part was to actually write the song and to kind of expand on the way I had simplified the idea down to those three letters. So first, let me just read you the quote so you know what I'm talking about. So the John Adams quote is, "I must study politics and war, that my sons may have liberty to study mathematics and philosophy. My sons ought to study mathematics and philosophy, geography, natural history, naval architecture, navigation, commerce, and agriculture, in order to give their children a right to study painting, poetry, music, architecture, statuary, tapestry, and porcelain." Now, that's a wordy block of text. I know that there's a lot of descriptors in there and there's a lot of things, but it really does boil down to this three-part idea, which is that I must study war so my son can study trade so that his son can study art. And I think that's a really beautiful sentiment, and it's something that I've come to internalize a lot about my own life. But I think one of the things that is important about it is to recognize that you can extrapolate this to say that everyone's going to experience one of those three things throughout their life in different areas in relation to the people that came before them and the people that will live after them. So in my own life, I can look to the life of my great-grandfather, my grandfather, my dad, and me, and say that there are definitely times where each of them have experienced the war portion of life and gone through very difficult things that led their son to be able to have an easier time with that or to be able to understand it in a more complex and realistic way. And so in some areas of my life, I feel that I have the freedom to study poetry and art, and I'm that third generation who gets to experience things. But there are many other areas that I feel like I'm going through war and I'm going through difficult things that I'm going to have to pass on to my children, who will then be able to pass it on to their children, and it won't be for 3 generations before things are really resolved or approached in a different way. So in thinking of a way to take that entire big block of text and then simplify it down to I'm studying war so my son can study trade so his son can study poetry, I came up with this 3-symbol thing that I thought kind of represented it well. The first is the X, and X obviously kind of lends itself to the idea of opposition. You have 2 crossing lines. These could be swords, these could be guns, it could be whatever you want it to be. But in general, I like that idea in the letter X of something about opposition, a crossing of paths. Conflict is really represented there. So that's what the X represents. It represents the first generation going to war. The O kind of has a dual meaning here, which I thought was neat. You can either think of it as a globe and as a map, and that it's talking about commerce and trade because that's, something that in John Adams' time would have had a lot to do with shipping and intercontinental travel. But you can also think of it as a coin. That's something to do with commerce. And even in the modern era of everything digital, we still have physical representations of money and trade. And so thinking of the O as a coin representation, a way to talk about commerce, I think is the way that worked the best for me to explain it. And then finally, we have the I. And I do also think this has 2 purposes. The first of those would be that I, as the reference to yourself, could be a study of self-actualization and the process of learning about yourself, which is a luxury often not afforded to people who have gone through really, really difficult trials and times in life, or people that have dedicated their life to studying things like commerce and trade. Oftentimes, it's someone who gets to study the arts and poetry and music and literature that gets a little bit more time to think about themselves and their place in the world. And that's a beautiful thing, but it's also a luxury that I want to be aware of. So the I helps represent that. But also the I can represent a pen or a paintbrush, an instrument, an object, a tool that's used to create things in an artistic way. And again, that's a luxury that not everybody is afforded. So I think having a symbol on this 3-part list that represents a tool used to create things is pretty important. So yeah, the title of the song came first. It was going to be called XOI, and then from there I just needed to kind of build out from that and figure out what the song was about. Now, if you've listened to the song, you might recoil a little bit. You might pull back when you hear the lyrics to the first verse, and I understand that because it's not a very comforting or kind statement there. And I did talk to my parents after writing it because I wanted to express to them that the point of the song has not really that much to do with them specifically, but really it's about this overarching theme of looking behind at people that came before you and looking ahead to people that will come after. So I wanted to start the song in a really cynical cynical fashion and make it sound very hopeless, so that by the time we got to the end of the song, you would feel that kind of tension release, that there's actually some peace and hope there. And then for the chorus itself, I really wanted to just take the statement, the John Adams quote, and simplify it and quote it directly. And I had thought about doing something that involved a deeper reading into that piece of text and to kind of expand on it, but I decided to take the 3 lines that I had already written that kind of simplified the statement down and just sing those. And it doesn't really rhyme that well, and it doesn't have the same structure as the rest of the song, but I really like how it turned out, and I think it has a nice hook to it. And for me, at least, it's made the statement easier to remember. I mean, I can now hum the song, and obviously memorization has a huge thing to do with rhythm and melody, so it's been very helpful for me to keep this statement in mind and this sentiment in my head because I now have a way to sing it. I'll let you go here, but I do want to give you one other detail about the song that I like lyrically here, which is that the first time that I use that John Adams quote, I say, "He has studied war, and I have studied trade. I pray my son is a poet who will sing about our days." But then the second time we go to that chorus in the song, I've shifted all of those forward one generation. So I have studied war, my son may study trade, I hope his son will study poetry. And I wanted, again, to just really cement that idea that it's not unique to everyone's experience. It's something that can happen to you in different areas and different times in your life. You can be the son or the daughter or anyone who's experiencing war or commerce or poetry. And you may not even know exactly which one you're experiencing until later in your life when you see your children or you see your parents or your grandparents go through things, and you kind of place yourself in that timeline and see how it all fits together. So that's the song XOI by More Haste, Less Speed. I would love if you gave it a listen. It means a lot to me for anybody to listen and check it out. And I look forward to giving you some new music pretty soon as well, so keep an eye out for that. And thanks for listening.